Today's awesome message is taken by a good mate of mine, Steve Hall. Buckle up, he's amazing.
So let me ask you, how did you wake up this morning? Or maybe you're still waking up. I woke up this morning so good. I woke up this morning, laid there in bed, and I thought, man, I am so lucky. The world is so good. I've got a great house. I've got an awesome job. I get to see lives change. I laid there and I thought, I've got a great wife. I've got an awesome family. We're doing well. Life is good. I felt relaxed. I had a good sleep. I got out of bed and it was great. But that was today. Monday this week, life was not that. I woke up and I went, oh man, do I really want to get up this morning? Work is tough at the moment. Finances aren't looking great in the office. Staff issues, some of our client issues. I was laying in that bed and I was going, I actually don't want to get out this morning. I actually just wanted to pull those covers over my head and say, get me on the bus out of here. I really didn't want to. In fact, the word resignation was pretty clear in my mind. So what happened between Monday and Friday? What was the difference? Because the circumstances are still the same. So I ask you the question, how did you get out of bed this morning? Because there's something's happened. See, we're doing a theme at the moment that says the world spins round, and in a sense, you know what? We're living in a really crazy world at the moment. It doesn't take much to look on your phone and see the newsreel or turn on the TV to find out that there is some crazy stuff happening. And even in a lucky country like Australia, there is a lot of stuff going on. And the world can just spin and spin and spin. And so I asked the question, when you woke up this morning, how did you wake up? What happened? I love this statement. And it says this. It says, change the way you look at things, and things you look at will change. Because I want to talk today about how do you conquer fear, but really more it's about how do I move from fear to faith. And I want to suggest to you, if you change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. So the way you look at things, if you could change that, you could change the way things are. It's the old story, isn't it? It's the old donut or the hole in the center. Or is my glass half full or is it half empty? How you see things will determine how you respond to life right now. And it's in a sense, I want to suggest to you that we live life with like a glasses of filters over them. I recently went to the eye specialist to get my eyes checked, my yearly appointment, which is about 3 years old. And I went there and I walked in and there was it's a new place. And it was like walking into a cupboard. It was small, it was dull. The gentleman was a lovely gentleman, but we obviously had a different way of speaking English, so I struggled to understand half of what he was saying. And I sat in this chair that was like I was going into the moon or something, and he puts these headset on me, or it's a set of glasses that looked like something out of Mad Max, and he starts putting these different filters over it, and he says to me, "What can you see?" And as I'm looking through these strange glasses, I said, "Not a lot." And he starts taking off some filters and putting something else in. He says, "Now what can you see?" I said, "Well, I can see something white over there and there's some blurry stuff." And he changes the filters again and says, "Now what do you see?" And he kept going until I had clear eyesight. I could see clearly those little letters that he had above us. You see, in life, we all look at things through filters. They're filters of your past. There's filters of experiences. You've had a bad experience. You will see life through that experience. Maybe you've had a bad relationships. You will look at life through those bad relationships. Maybe there's things going on for you right now and you're looking at stuff and it doesn't look clear anymore. And I want to suggest to you that those filters could be a filter of failure. I always fail. What do I expect? Or maybe it's a filter that I need to succeed. And if I can't see success, then we're not moving forward. I want to take you to an account of two people who had two different lenses. Two people who woke up in the morning to the same situation, but looked at the situation through a different set of lenses. And we pick it up in the book called 2 Kings. And in this book, it's 2 Kings 6, and we've been going through it. We've been talking about Elijah and Elisha, and at the moment we're focusing on Elisha. Well, this is what happened. Let me give you the back end of the story. You see, there's Israel, King Jehoram, and he's there, and there's another king from Aram, and they're wanting to take them out. They want to take more ground. And so the king of Aram, he sets up his troops to set up this battle plan. What he didn't anticipate was there was this man of God, the prophet Elisha, who's got he's got direct access to God. And God gives Elisha the intel of what's going to happen with the attack. And so Elisha goes and tells the king of Israel and says, hey, listen, don't go there, or get ready, or get your army in this place. And he sets him up. So every time the army of Aram comes along, Israel's waiting for them. And they kept losing, or they disappeared, and they kept losing. And in the end, the king of Aram says, can someone tell me who's the mole rat? Who's the person who's the traitor? Who's the person who's giving away our information? What's going on? Well, all his wise men and his generals all come together to have a conversation, and they said, look, there's no one here, but the person who's giving it away is a bloke called Elisha, this prophet. First, direct line to God, seems to know everything. He's giving away the information before we can actually even get our armies together. So what the king decides to do, he said, okay, fellas, get the whole army, take this one guy out. Find out where he is. When you find out where he is, let's go and get him out. Let's get rid of this man of God who's got the direct line to God. Let's take him out, and then we might be able to win the battle. So he gets the whole army, 100,000 troops to take one person. Let me pick it up in 2 Kings, and it's chapter 6, verse 13. And it goes like this. The king says, go and find out where he is, where Elisha is, the king commands, so I can send troops to seize him. The report came back, Elisha is at Jotham. So one night, the king of Aram sent a great army with many chariots and horses to surround the city. When the servant of the man of God got up early in the morning and went outside, there were troops, horses and chariots everywhere. Oh, sir, what will we do now? The young man cried to Elisha. Don't be afraid, Elisha told him, for there are more on our side than theirs. Then Elisha prayed, O Lord, open his eyes and let him see. The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw the hillside surrounded. And on that hillside, and the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. Imagine that. I want to ask you a question. When we start this conversation of shifting from fear to faith is this. Where is your Jotham? You see, they found him at Jotham. Now, Jotham's an interesting place because it's only mentioned twice in the Bible. And the first time was when a guy called Joseph, you probably remember him, he was the guy that had some nice jacket that was filled in many colours, and he was the youngest son. And so what happened was he goes out to see his brothers, and his brothers are at Jotham. And his brothers got this idea, let's just kill him. So they chuck him down a well to get rid of him because this guy Joseph was suggesting that he was going to be more powerful. He was going to rule his brothers. He was going to rule the country. They would be serving him. And they didn't like that. So they chucked him down this well. This is the same place we find these two guys, Elisha and his servant, surrounded by this army. You see, Jotham represents for us that place of being trapped, that place where the world is against us and where we find ourselves in a Jotham where there is no way out. We feel trapped. We feel like people have made accusations and have held us back. And I wonder what your Jotham is. Maybe it's the false accusations of people around you that are starting to wear on you. Maybe it's financial difficulties and you feel like, how am I going to get out of this? Maybe it's a workplace situation and you've got stuff happening and you could end up losing your job and you can't find a way out. Maybe it's sickness and you've just heard a report and you're going, oh my goodness, I just don't know what to do next. See, we all have a Jotham sometime. We all are in that place. And for you, it will be different to me. But I know I've found those places of feeling totally trapped. And when you're trapped, what happens is we start using words like, I want to quit. Resignation, that's a good word. Or maybe that sense of hopelessness. Get me on the bus. I just want to get out of here. I want to get off this merry-go-round. You just want to stop everything because it just is too hard. And that's where that place starts to dwell up inside us. But you have a choice. You see, you have a choice in every situation. And the choice is all to do with your perspective. You have a choice to live through the lens of fear. Oh no, the world's going to go potty, it's going to go crazy, I've got no hope, life is just going to stop as I know it. Or you could look through the lens of faith. Because there was two people in that house. It wasn't just the servant, it was Elisha. And Elisha saw it different. This is what it says in verse 15. When the servant of the man of God got up early in the morning and went outside and saw the horses and the chariots, oh sir, what shall we do? Notice that he says here, what shall we do? You see, it says here that Elisha says to the servant, don't be afraid. The first person that's in this room is the servant. And the servant is captured and he is demobilized, which is what fear does, with fear. He had the lens of fear. When he went outside, he saw 100,000 of the army around them ready to attack. I'd be afraid too. I think the odds were definitely against him. And Elisha says, don't be afraid. That's not a good thing to say to a person who's caught up in fear. It's going to be all right. You'll get over this. Look, good things happen to good people. You're a good person. It'll be okay. Don't worry. When you're caught up in fear, and I've been there, those types of words don't really help. But you see, because fear demobilizes us. Fear entraps us. Fear consumes our attention. Fear is when I see the problem that I'm facing down there at Dothan, my Dothan, when it becomes bigger than my resources, guess what happens? Stress, anxiety, and fear starts to overtake us. But you do notice that what he said was, what will we do? Notice that the attention is now on us. It's what can we do? You see, one of the things that we do when we are fearful, we look within our own resources. We look within our own ability, our own little toolbox of what are we going to do? In a society where independence and the need to do things ourselves is valued, independence is valued, and because of that, quite often we get caught up in what am I going to do? And I don't look for anybody outside to help us, especially men. We have a struggle with that sometimes because we've learnt this whole idea is that's a weakness if I ask for somebody else. I wonder how many of you, especially husbands, or that you're driving somewhere and you're lost and you're going, where are we going to go? And your wife says, why don't we ask somebody? What? Ask somebody? You've got to be joking. I'll work it out. Don't worry. I've got this. I will work it out. You know, that's a difficulty for us guys, but also for women as well. But I have noticed that if you look at depression, anxiety, and even the sense of suicides are higher in the male population. Why is that? Because we're trying to do it ourselves. We live on an island and we're going, I am caught up with fear because I've got to do it myself. Can I suggest to you that one of the greatest traps when we're facing difficulties is the fear of reaching out for help? And maybe that's where you're at right now. And can I say to you, there are people around you that will help you. That's what the church is there for. That's what your community of faith is there for, to get along and work with you. You see, the servant was caught up in this trap. But the second person in the room didn't have the glasses or the lens of fear. There was someone else in the room. And we pick it up in verse 16, it says, don't be afraid, Elisha told him, for there are more outside than, there is more on our side than there is on theirs. Elisha prayed, oh Lord, open his eyes, let him see. The Lord opened the man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw the hillside around. Elisha was filled with horses and chariots. You see, Elisha saw something that the servant couldn't see. Elisha looked through a lens of faith. The fear of God, Charles Spurgeon said, the fear of God is the death of every other fear. Like a mighty lion, it chases all other fears before it. In other words, Elisha had a faith in God that overcame his fear of man. You see, I heard someone say this the other day, and I thought it was interesting. He said, fear and faith are the same. Really? How does that work? You see, fear says, something that has happened, something that hasn't happened yet is going to happen. Fear is fixed on something that hasn't happened yet is going to happen. Faith says something hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. Notice the difference in that. They're both the same, but they're different. One is focused on the fear of the negative of what's going to happen, and one is focused on the faith that something good is going to happen. It's a bit like, which reminds me of my favourite story, the David and Goliath, you know. There's the story of the people of Israel, and they're being attacked, you know, and they've got this army, and Israel was the biggest army, and then there was the Philistines who were attacking them, and they said, I tell you what, let's just do this with your biggest guy against our biggest guy, right? David turns up at this battlefield where there's a stalemate because no one in Israel was prepared to go and fight that Goliath. Even the king, who was head and shoulders above everybody else, had taken his armor off and was sitting down trying to work out what to do. The fear of Goliath demobilized the army of Israel. And David turns up and he hears the knocking of knees, the fear that was happening in the paddocks around of this great army of Israel. They were looking at going, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? David turns up and says, hey, what's going to happen here? Because my God, the one I have faith in, is bigger than their God, than their Goliath, than their issues. You see, when you see something that's bigger than the problem we're facing, all of a sudden faith starts to come up. It's looking through the glasses, or if you like, the lens of faith. Hebrews 11 says this. It says, and it is impossible to please God without faith. So we need to put on these glasses of faith to please God. But notice what it says. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he will reward those who sincerely seek him. In other words, faith is connected with a belief. It's a belief in who God is. It's a belief in how big God is. You see, the lens of faith starts with the lens of belief that there is a God. And if I seek after him, he will actually turn up. Is your God that you believe in big enough to overcome the struggles and the things that we are fearful of? Whether it's personal fears or whether it's the fears of what's happening in society right now? I love this one in John 11, one of the Gospels in the New Testament. And John, one of the disciples, gives an account of Jesus. And Jesus is going to see a good friend of his called Lazarus, who's now has died. It's a great story because Jesus turns up. People would suggest late, but he didn't. He turned up on time. It was 4 days later, and it needed to be 4 days later. And Lazarus is now dead. And he turns up at the front of the tomb that they've put him in. And Jesus' response is this. In John 11:40, it says, didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe? Did you see that? Our eyes get open to what God can do if we first believe. And the belief takes me to grow my faith. You see, the size of your God will shape the size of your problem. And if we could change your lens, to change your lens, we also need to change our company. If the servant did not have the company of Elisha, who actually had a belief and a faith in a God that was much bigger than that army, that servant would have been crushed and would have been given in to the problems that were around him. But look at this. It says, Elisha prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes and let him see." The Lord opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. It's not easy changing your lenses sometimes. It's not easy to move from a place of fear. I know that. It crushes you and it holds you. But look who is around you. Look who's speaking into your life. See, we need people around us. That's why we want you to gather on a Sunday morning with other believers to help build your belief, to help stir your belief on, to help create your faith. That's why we like small groups gatherings, because it's those. It's why we encourage you to find friends and people that you will pray with and build you up. You see, if the people you're hanging around with have the same lens of fear, you will give in to fear. But if you have others that have a lens of faith, their faith will stir you on. Their faith will move you on. Their faith will grow your belief. And when your belief grows, your eyes get open. But we also need to have a supernatural intervention. You see, Elisha said, God, you open his eyes. We need to pray for God to help us see. It's when we push in, as that scripture says, that if you seek him, if you believe and seek him, and when we seek him, he becomes so much bigger. A young guy called Timothy, he was being coached by Paul, the apostle. And Paul says to him in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, which is also one of the letters in the back in the New Testament, it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." That's powerful. God didn't give us that spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of faith. He's given us a spirit that builds us up. It's a spiritual thing as well as a cognitive thing. It's something that happens inside us. So I want to leave you with this. If you're in Dothan right now, or maybe you're facing a whole bunch of things you cannot see the answer to. Maybe you're looking at a world and you're thinking, I'm not sure what's happening around our world right now. Maybe there are sleepless nights that you've been having. Can I encourage you? Take your lens of fear off. The lens of worry, the lens of anxiety, and do two things. Number one, find people of faith that you can share with, who will stand with you, who will cheer you on. And then the other thing is seek after God. That's through worship, that's through prayer, that's just being still, that's by getting away. You see, I've got a feeling, it doesn't say it, but I think the servant of the Lord, when he saw that, he came inside and looked at Elisha. What are you looking at when you're surrounded by that army? Can I suggest, turn your eyes off the problem and turn your eyes onto a God who is much bigger, who says, don't worry about these things, but seek first me. Seek first my kingdom. Again, later on, the Apostle Paul says, be anxious about nothing, but through everything, through prayer and supplication. In other words, come back to a big God and seek him. And make God bigger in your life, bigger than the problems that we're facing in Dothan. That's how we take off these lenses of fear, is by putting on a lens of faith that is created by those around us. That's a spiritual thing as we grow and seek after God. My prayer for you is that if you're a person like me who goes into those places of Dothan regularly, can I encourage you? There is a God that's bigger. Seek after him. Take off your